Hello, this is Jeremy Murphy, and I am in Lincoln, Nebraska. And today we're going to discuss the Irish potato famine. Very deep subject, subject of some controversy from the 19th century. And I'll talk about why this is important to me and why I think it's important today with what's happening in Europe and throughout the world with immigration. People are looking for not really sanctuary, but a place where they can have a chance to have a decent life and to obtain a decent education, find a work where they can support themselves and their family, things of that nature. But I'll explain how I realized how significant this event was. I've been doing a lot of genealogical research, and I have Irish roots, as you might imagine, with the name Murphy. There's a fair significance with Irish ancestry in my family. And my my second great-grandfather came to the United States fleeing from the Irish potato famine. And the potato farming is it runs so deep in my family that even to this day, my father still plants potatoes every year. We have a potato room in our house. There's just a deep resonance of this. And it's not so much just the issue of it being an agricultural issue, but the potato itself has lasting significance that lasts to this day. And until I moved out of Norfolk, where my parents still live, I would plant potatoes with my dad every year, and we would harvest them together and, try not to stick them in the process and that type of thing. But really, when we look at the Irish potato famine, we had to look at, number one, what caused it? And we, as historians, we get into these cause and effect analyses of history. And, I have a history major. I don't do a whole lot with it now. So I was excited to find historical topics I could talk about on Blab to maybe give people a little bit more information and, it could be able to discuss some historical events and how they have relevance today. So one of the most exciting things about what happened with the potato famine is to find scientific discoveries today that tell us why this happened. And there was a fungus that I think in 2013, the History Channel produced an article showing that DNA evidence identified the particular fungus that affected the potatoes that were making the potatoes start to turn to blight, and the potatoes would turn black, and then these potatoes would ferment and infect adjacent potatoes. And science back in the mid-1900s, we didn't have the ability to do DNA testing on potatoes. They didn't really know what was happening, and it was beyond their ability to really figure out and understand. But they became quickly aware that this was going to be an issue and a problem, and a significant problem, where you see entire potato crops wiped out. You see people eating these potatoes that are infected with this fungus and then getting sick with cholera and other conditions. And another problem that the infected potatoes caused is then peasant farmers had to turn to other nutritional means of obtaining vitamin C, and the options were not great at that time. The poor in Irish at that time were some of them were living off rations and subsidies of the British government, and so they were receiving cornmeal and things like this. And the cornmeal didn't contain the vitamin C that the potatoes did, and so the vitamin C would prevent scurvy. And when you have all these potatoes destroyed, suddenly you have, thousands of people trying to figure out what they're going to eat, not having a lot of other options. And so scurvy was coming back, although the prevalence of potatoes was really of healthy potatoes was keeping scurvy under control up to that point. So it was really in about September of 1845 when this was announced. I want to make sure, I think I said this before I went on the record, but I want to make sure I get this on here because it's important. I think we all have to have a sense of why we're here, what our mission is, what our purpose is in life. And in order to do that, as far as I'm concerned, we need to really understand our roots as best as we can. Understanding that we're going to have gaps in those, that we're going to have, for example, my family at about the 1730s in Ireland, we hit a brick wall. We can't find anything. And that's very frustrating to me as a historian. It's helped me realize that I can maybe look at some other periods of time and other points of family tree where I might be able to find out more about our family history and go through other branches, and maybe not find information I want through the direct branches, but maybe some of the indirect branches will produce a better understanding of this. But I feel like if I can better understand this event, I can better teach it to our daughter, to help my wife better understand it, to help others understand the significance of this and the impact that it had on immigration of Irish immigrants to the United States primarily, and to other countries as well, but primarily a lot of the people that fled the Irish potato famine fled to the United States. That's really where they end up. So let's see, we talked about the History Channel revealing the scientific fungus that was responsible for the Great Potato Famine, the Irish Potato Famine. People call it different things. The Irish Potato Famine is really what it's called more frequently by Americans, but I think in Ireland it might be known more as the Great Potato Famine. And if any of you listen to this or pop in and you happen to be from Ireland or in Ireland now, I'd be really curious what your impression of these events are. And really, the same thing for anyone who might be living in England, because, England was put in a situation where they had to try to figure out how to help Ireland, whether it was best to help Ireland directly or whether it was best to kind of have a laissez-faire, leave it alone type of attitude or approach. And that's kind of what it degenerated into after a change in the British government. The laissez-faire policy didn't work too well. So anyway, hey, welcome, Kevin. Good to see you. Just talking about the Irish potato famine and its relevance today with historical events, and also with just looking at where we are with immigration issues. It just had a huge impact on immigration in the United States, and of course, we Irish immigrants are all over the place, all over the world. Welcome, Samantha. Good to see you here. Just talking about the Irish potato famine and the impact that it's had, and I don't know, trying to get Irish perspectives on these type of events, or British perspectives for that matter. One of the articles that I cited above, it talked about Tony Blair apologized for the Irish potato famine, for the British responsibility in the Irish potato famine in, 2008, 2009. And I think I said, why did it take so long? Why would it take the British government so long to realize the responsibility, at least in part, that they had for things reaching this crisis proportion, where you have, 1 million people fleeing to the United States and elsewhere, because there really wasn't anywhere else to go. For for Irish Catholics especially, there was so much oppression due to religious discrimination, and you had serfdom and slavery going on with people that were trying to operate crops, and it just, the landlords were really tightening the screws and putting people in a really tough situation. And I think, my family is primarily from Cork, Ireland, from Cork in Cork County, which is one of the southernmost counties. And Southern Ireland was extremely dependent upon the potato. And so when the potato wasn't available, healthy quantities, that forced Irish people to do one of a couple of different things. Some would go and try to find work in Ireland. Others were trying to fish, to switch from farming to fishing. And depending on the weather, that wasn't always the best thing. There was a tough winter in 1846, 1847, I think, is a range of years where it just had a lot of really rough winter storms, lots of snow. And so that made fishing rather impractical for that period of time. So it was just very difficult for people to find other options, and they had to flee. I think a lot of people that wanted to flee and immigrate were not able to do so because they were too sick. And in some cases, they were forced to immigrate and dumped in these coffin ships and sent to, maybe British North America, and just dumped out there and left to see if they could survive. And wow, that's just shocking to me that would be, allowed to happen. So I'm going to let Samantha in here.
Hi.
She must. Oh, there you are. Hi, Samantha. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm just popping in just to say hi because Charlene called me in there. I'm Irish, obviously, and great topic, by the way. Well done. But for me, the Irish potato famine is a huge part of our history. And yes, it's like the Titanic movie, the way you saw a lot of them were down in the poor part of the ship, like the cheapest tickets. But, there are so many people, Americans that actually come over, and Canadians and British that come over to try and trace their roots and stuff, because a lot of them came at that time to America. But really, for me, as a normal Irish person or whatever, it was a huge part of our history, a huge part of our school history. Actually, Patrick is Irish too, and he's just popped into the room there, so he might know more about this because I wasn't big on history myself, but it's a huge part of our history and huge tourist attraction, anything to do with the famine. But we still love potatoes, believe it or not. But to be honest, as a normal Irish person, it's just in history, and I don't hold grudges or anything against the British, or there are people, of course, who are extreme in their views that way, and it's just something that happened in history. A lot of mistakes were made. A lot of people did die, and I always used to think, well, why couldn't they fish? It's an island. Why couldn't they catch fish and eat fish? But I don't know enough about it to be able to give a proper, add enough value to this, I suppose. So I just thought I'd pop in and say that in case people were expecting me to know loads about it. I don't.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I was hoping to time this well enough to catch some people in Ireland, to have it early enough in the day that some of you would still be up and awake. So I'm glad to see that some of you were able to at least pop in and contribute. And I don't think I've formally met you on Blab either. So good to meet you.
No, hi. Yeah,
I think
nice
we corresponded in the comments and all that,
But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a tweet out and ask people that are interested to join you, okay? So I'll do a tweet with the link to the Blab.
Great. And
then that way you might get some people so interested.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm hoping to maybe follow up on this later, because there's the immigration portion of this is kind of a sort of a postlude to the story, or towards the end of when the famine was occurring. That's really where the big wave of immigration was happening, or, when the timing of it was. So, hi, Patrick. How are you?
Hey, Jeremy. How's it going? Hey, Sam.
Hi. I'm just putting the tweet up there so people can join. Maybe we'll get more people on.
Okay. Thank you.
Sammy, you've made me an addict to Blab. It's ridiculous at this point. And because I get notifications on my laptop when something Blabish comes up, so it's a case of, oh, the Irish famine. Okay, this should be fun.
Don't mind him, Jeremy. He's just stalking me. That's all he's doing. And every time I go on air, he comes in. That's all it is.
This is a lie. This is a lie. I spent most of my day on. I didn't see you once, so don't pretend. But I just caught what you were saying, and I suppose we kind of Jeremy, we learned about the famine briefly in kind of primary school, which is like, I suppose 4 to 12 age group here in Ireland. And then after that, it's kind of, you move on to kind of current, well 19th and 20th century kind of European history, as opposed to the Irish famine itself. But we kind of we would have some knowledge on it, but not particulars or facts and things like that. I mean, the reason why so many people died wasn't really because the potato crop itself failed. It was because of the restrictions that were put on imports and exports to Ireland from Britain at the time, which didn't allow for other types of food like maize and corn and other types of vegetables to be imported into Ireland. The reason why we didn't just eat fish, Sam, was because the ports were patrolled by the British government as well, and there was taxes and so on and so forth put on that as well. About 1.6 million Irish people died during the famine, and I think 1.2 million went to the likes of the US and Australia and to other places as well. So actually, in my hometown, which is New Ross, a small town in Wexford, in the southeast of Ireland, John F. Kennedy's grandparents left New Ross on a famine ship.
I forgot about that.
from New Ross, and we've got we actually built a replica of that ship in our hometown. Which was
I'll actually put a link in. Will I put a link in the chat to that ship? Will I, guys? So you can see it.
Sure. Do you?
Cool.
It's called
Dunbrody famine ship, isn't it? Yeah. Dunbrody.
Yeah. So the Kennedy homestead. There's like a museum and everything there now, but it's situated about six miles away from the town of New Ross itself. And every year we have kind of like a festival, and last year was the 50th anniversary since John F. Kennedy himself revisited his family home. It was a couple of years ago, 1963 or 64. I think 63, because he was shot in 63 as well. So he visited Ireland back in 1963. So there was a big commemoration and so on. And all of the Kennedys, his cousins, his grandchildren, ex-wife and so on, all visited our town just as a mark of respect for the heritage of the Kennedys. But then again, most of the US presidents would have some form of history. The Clintons are originally from County Waterford. The Reagans are originally from County Tipperary. And all of the...
And even Obama.
Yeah, that's true. Obama does have Irish roots, and I guess so did Andrew Jackson and Woodrow Wilson, which I think I knew about Jackson. I didn't realize Woodrow Wilson did, but...
It's amazing. It's amazing. I suppose that's why today in the elections the Irish vote is so important. The Irish famine, it was a terrible time. Like, it happened over a period of, it didn't just happen over like 3 or 4 years. It was started and ended over a 40-year period of time. 40 years of hardship is a lot. And
it was mostly the West, though, wasn't it? And Cork, as you say, Jeremy. I think the West suffered an awful lot, because I know I go to the West a lot, and you can see the walls. What was the story, Patrick, with the walls? You know, all the walls in the Burn, for example. I'll actually try and get a picture or something. I mean, in the Burn in the West, in County Clare, didn't the English get them to build these walls to earn money or something? I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, it was a case of it was not so long after the plantations again. So you had landlords evicting lots of Irish families who couldn't pay their rents and so on because, and to earn any kind of keep, they literally built fields with these walls, and you'll see old Ireland and all of the stone masonry and so on. There, Sam is probably trying to find a link there, but
I'll find a picture.
Something Sam mentioned there in terms of modern times. It's not something that is particularly. I mean, yeah, we have the whole 800 years of oppression or blah 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 from the British government and so on. But I think we're smart enough today to recognize that, those are the sins of the past rather than holds modern UK accountable for things that happened a couple of hundred years ago. And there's no real anger or disdain or anything like that from intelligent people anyway. Maybe idiots.
Exactly, that's it. Really, yeah, you said it there.
Maybe idiots who actually have no knowledge of what they're talking about or the plight of the people who are just looking for something. Yeah. But yeah, we're pretty good with our neighbours at the moment, actually. So that was
now
good.
Fidelma has joined as well from Twitter because I've been telling her about Blab. So Fidelma, are you able to get into the seat? Because Fidelma has a kind of a different. She's saying she doesn't know much about the famine other than Ireland is living with it in our mindset. There you go. Whereas I thought we kind of got over it, whatever. But I'm after putting a link into the stone walls there that we were talking about, and it actually says on this site. I just googled it. It actually says that they're called famine walls. So there you go. So there was some kind of story.
But in terms of Sam, in terms of getting over the famine, like in terms of the arts and culture and so on, it's littered within most of the famous playwrights. I did a play last year only called Sharon's Grave, which was based in 1930s Ireland, but it was still that was full of memories and the history of all of the young people have left the countryside and it was abandoned, and the countryside, particularly in the West Coast, was just left with old and sick people, whereas anyone who could left, and that left its mark on the countryside for well over 100 years. But John B. Keane in particular, and most of our poets would have written in some capacity about.
Oh yeah, there's definitely, and there's loads of ballads about it.
Almost every Irish ballad would have something.
Almost every. The Fields of Athenry, it's the Fields of Athenry about that, no? Is it?
No, the Fields of Athenry.
I can sing it. Yeah. I can sing it, Jeremy, if you like.
Go ahead.
No. Might get lots more people in the Blab.
No, I don't want to put you on the spot, though, but.
But there is really you're right, actually. Yeah, you see, Patrick's right, actually. There is a lot of poets, especially, and it's in the plays. What's that play called, Patrick? The one where you're the king, the something of the West, the Playboy of the Western world. Is that?
Playboy of the Western world, yeah. It's a great play.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of that, Jeremy.
It sounds vaguely familiar, but I can't remember. I don't know. It's just vague. Unfortunately, it's not very specific. There's
a lot of really good plays like that, that would kind of show the old, like The Quiet Man, I suppose, is a good example of an American kind of take on what happened, the scenery and all that, but nothing about the famine, really. I suppose the Titanic ship, that was really a good indication, the way they were down in the lower decks, and most of them got killed on the Titanic because,
Yeah.
They had no money either, but I don't know. I like, there is a famine village actually you can go and visit in Clare, in the Burren, in County Clare and Fenor. You can actually go and see it. It's just a deserted village. It's really spooky.
Yeah, it's
kind of cool though as well.
There's another one on Ackle as well. There's just a completely abandoned village just off Stoneworks.
I have to hop out. My daughter's looking for me here. I have to hop out, guys. Look, okay. I'll keep listening. Okay, thanks. See you.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it. Hey, hi, Fidelma. How are you?
I'm good, Jeremy. How are you?
Doing well. Are you in Ireland? Is that what did I understand that correctly?
Yes, I'm in Dublin. Jeremy,
okay.
Where are you?
I'm in Lincoln, Nebraska, kind of the center of the United States.
Oh, very good, very good.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. You know, Dublin is where the potato famine memorial is, right? With all the statues.
Yeah, they
I think
they have a memorial along the quays. They've got some statues of the famine, of people that were going out on the boats.
Mm-hmm.
So they have created some in recognition of that. Yeah. And I heard something actually at a conference. It was about an Indian-Irish conference about 3 months ago.
Okay.
And it was an interesting fact that when the famine happened, the women, they had lost, they weren't able to work on the farms. So a lot of the women became nuns then. I actually never knew that about Ireland. That's why so many Irish women went into the nuns. Like hundreds of them went into the nuns. Obviously, they're not going into it at such a rate now. And I was just amazed. And there's actually a few women in Ireland as well. It was a really interesting talk about how Ireland and India were so connected around the time of the famine. There's quite a bit of history.
Interesting.
So, there's a global impact of the famine.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about Ireland.
Yeah, it did have a global impact. That's a great point. We think about it just, being in Ireland or in Europe, and it did have far-reaching implications that have lasted hundreds of years, I think. Do you agree?
Yeah. What's your interest in the famine, Jeremy?
Well, I'm Irish by descent, and so I also have an interest as a historian. I was a history major in college, and I was very interested in British history in particular, and how it related to Ireland. Just looking at how the laws worked, and I'm also an attorney too, so I have legal interest in seeing how all these issues were handled.
Yeah, I think. Okay.
Well, I mean,
the quality of my internet is not great here, so it's cutting in and out a little bit.
Okay.
Hi, Patrick.
Yeah. So, I mean, I studied law in college as well at Jeremy, so I have an interest there as well, just as a minor subject. But 90% of British law would be Irish law. We literally took what they had and implemented it into Ireland with some amendments since 1937 only. So British common law would be Irish common law at the same time.
Okay.
So.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good to know. I hadn't really ever taken a look at that or studied that. So it's good to have that as a foundation for starting to look at Irish law.
Yeah, I mean, literally, when we first we kind of wrote our first constitution in 1937, actually, which was written in part by Eamon de Valera, who's actually had dual citizenship, both within Ireland and as an American as well. And he subsequently became president of Ireland for 14 years. So the constitution was written in 1937. So from that point onwards, the vast majority of new laws are just amendments to the old British common law, which is what we had for 800 years here. So if you look at Irish law, it's pretty much the same, bar there's been several amendments, but it's pretty much the same thing, really. And even in terms of case law, it's very common in Ireland to look at precedence cases in the British courts as opposed to Irish courts, because they go back much further, obviously.
No, that's true. There are hundreds more years of history there, I guess. So,
yeah, absolutely. But the case law would apply to the Irish courts because of the general laws that were ruling book at the same time. And I'm sure, in some of the Commonwealth states and so on, like a place like Boston and so on, would have gotten their kind of initial structure and so on by British law as well, and the original colonies. So it wouldn't be any different in Ireland. And in fact, we only gained our independence, officially in the 1930s. So, so our country technically is younger than yours. even though your country technically is quite a young country.
True. Yeah, and that seems
well,
that doesn't seem right. But
so good to meet you guys.
Good to meet you.
I hope to see.
Sounds good. Thanks, Fidelma.
See you on a future blab.
See.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.
See you later, Fidelma. Sam reckons I know a lot. I just don't know when to stop talking, and that's all.
What about is the potato still a cash crop there today? I mean, now that we know more about science and agriculture, and I kind of wonder. I looked at the potatoes I have at home to see where they came from, and they're made in the United States. I was hoping to hold up Irish potatoes. I could have maybe held up Irish oats, but that's about as close I have to the Irish potato here right now.
Yeah, I mean, the potato is still a stalwart of almost every Irish meal. I mean, we've become more kind of a European in some of our eating choices, but several times a week, the main meal in that would be primarily potato based. As meat, 2 veg, and potatoes. That's kind of every mammy's kind of go-to meal. But yeah, certainly. We love our potatoes, mashed potato, roast potatoes, whatever kind of potatoes you want.
What about sweet potatoes? Or is that changing it too much? Because they're healthier.
Yeah, absolutely. And but they wouldn't be as common.
True.
Lots of people like sweet potatoes, but traditional Irish mammies would definitely just go for regular potatoes. And there's different types of potatoes, of course. Roosters, British Queens, Kerpinks, just to name 3. But the potato is as prevalent today as it was 50 years ago, 100 years ago. And Sam thinks I know lots about potatoes. Gosh. No, Sam, I just love eating potatoes, as you can tell by the couple of chins I have here. An Irishman knows his spuds.
Yeah, it's good to have staples like this that are so versatile that you can make into soup, you can mash them, you can roast them. Kids use them for games and things like that, or art projects. I mean, they're much more versatile than just eating them too. They're kind of crafty, creative now, but. Boy, there's really nothing like mashed potatoes in our family. Although I hate the fact that the skins disappear from that, because there goes some of the vitamins.
Yeah, again, mashed potatoes. With a bit of cream, bit of butter, pinch of salt mixed in. Happy days. Can't go wrong. You're making me hungry.
Well, and I'm not trying to, but Sam's coming back.
No, it's brilliant because, sorry, Jeremy, it's just, I love this kind of topic about Irish things. Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Mashed potatoes with milk. You see, the milk that we have over here is amazing. And the butter, Kerrygold butter. I'm actually going to call a few people into the room that I know love talking about the butter that we have. It's like, the potatoes Patrick's right, okay? If my dad would freak out if my mother gave him pasta, it's like, what is this stuff? This foreign stuff, Whereas if you gave him meat, vegetables, and potatoes, happy days, and everything had to be potatoes. And we all learned how to peel potatoes from so it's really, really part of the Irish thing, the culture, and we even have potato crisps and mashed potatoes, croquet potatoes. What are those things called? They sell in Wexford. The rissoles. Are they potatoes? Made of potatoes?
Oh, rissoles. No, I don't think so.
I think they are.
You're talking about something else.
I don't know, but there's definitely potatoes. Like, potatoes are gorgeous, but they're very high in carbohydrates, as you can imagine.
They are.
If you were to ask an Irishman what if he was on death row, what his last meal would be, typically it would be steak, mashed potatoes, mushy peas or
Onions.
something like that. Onions and a bit of pepper sauce. Happy days. He'd die man.
Have you been to Ireland, Jeremy?
I have not. I really want to go. My parents waited until their 25th wedding anniversary to visit Ireland for the first time, and my mom loved that because she forgot her suitcase, so she got a brand new Irish wardrobe when they landed in Dublin. But we're just a couple of years from our 25th wedding anniversary, so if not then, I'd love to go before. And I saw that you invited me to the social media summit in March. I'd love to go.
Well, Ted Rubin is coming over, and he has a Donegal tweed waistcoat waiting for him. That a customer, there was a company that does these Donegal Irish tweed things. So I asked her, would she make him a waistcoat? And so hopefully he'll wear it on the stage, and that would be huge for her, a huge boost. And also, Ted, he'll tweet it out, he'll take a selfie, So,
he really knows his stuff with social media, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And with life.
Well, that's why he's my keynote. That's
right.
Yeah, that's why he's the keynote speaker. But Ireland is, I love Ireland, and I think it's such a beautiful place. Okay, it rains a lot, but even the beauty of the landscape, the greenery of it, even the wild Atlantic breeze, we call it, but wind, really, stormy wind. But, I just love it. I love the West, is beautiful. I live in Wexford. Patrick is based in Wexford most of the time. And it's like the southeast, like with beautiful beaches. It's just so fresh, the fresh air and the people. Like, we love a bit of crack. I'm sure you've heard that. CRAIC, not the crack, not the drug. And like the Guinness, and there's like all the traditional music and all that now. But as you're talking about the famine, there are lots of statues and like Fidelma was saying, all over the city, and there's a lot of there's a potato famine museum here in Wexford, actually, Patrick, in Johnstown Castle.
Yep.
Did you know that?
I did indeed.
So
as you pointed out earlier, I know everything. So
yeah, that's right. Yes, sorry. There's the famine ship. So we have a lot to offer, and Ireland has actually rebranded. The tourist. Fáilte Ireland. Fáilte means welcome. So Fáilte Ireland has actually rebranded that. We have the ancient, the ancient East, and then we have the Wild Atlantic Way for the West.
Okay.
So the ancient East is a lot of castles and structures, and like the Dunbrody famine ship, stuff like that. And then the West is more, there's lots of castles there too, but there's also more of the rugged kind of landscape that the people associate with Ireland, So I would love, actually I'd love to work for Fáilte Ireland. I actually love Ireland, and I love representing Ireland here on Blab. Mm-hmm. I just think there's so much potential to get more people to Ireland to visit. We've so much to offer, and that's why I decided to do the social media summit as well, is to show, look, okay, we had a famine, and we were, that was then, and this is now. We're innovative, we're talented, we've so much talent, and a lot of our talent has gone abroad, to emigrate because there was a recession here, and there's a lot of talent, a lot of good people. Same with every country, but, a lot of young people. It's a very young kind of cool happening, jolly, fun. We love to have fun, we love to dance, they love to drink as well, in fairness. There's a lot of alcoholism in Ireland, but it's not all bad, a lot of positive.
Germany, the dollar is doing quite well at the moment against the euro, so now it's the perfect time to come over as well, because you get more for your.
Yeah.
4 years ago I could get like $1.58 for a euro, and now I can get 1.08. Because I spend a lot of time in Boston and New York with work, so I'm over and back. So it's financially it's terrible, but the other way is perfect. It makes perfect sense for you to come over. I'll be in March. I look forward to seeing you, Jeremy. He nodded, Sam. That's a verbal commitment.
Social media. So
I'm talk to my wife. The only issue is my wife's from Northern Ireland, is where her ancestry is. So we'd have she'd want to know about relatives in Belfast, and I'd be in Cork trying to look up stuff there. So
that's one end of the country to the other, though. So you'd have to give yourself about 2 weeks.
I was wondering how did the Irish potato famine affect Northern Ireland? Because I'm looking this up. I didn't I didn't see really anything on that. That might be too narrow a topic to really address here. But I thought
maybe in Donegal, like Northern Ireland, like is part of Britain anyway. You see.
True.
So here's the thing, Jeremy. So the difference between Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland was the plantations, which happened in 1600s, whereby lots of British landlords were kind of planted into Northern Ireland. They were given a lot of land, and a lot of wealth subsequently happened from that. And the Industrial Revolution affected Northern Ireland more than Southern Ireland at that time as well. So cotton, shipbuilding and things like that became much more prevalent, which meant that Northern Ireland was much wealthier than the rest of Ireland at the time. So whilst the rest of Ireland was mostly farmers, peasants, tradesmen, there was an industrial revolution happening in Northern Ireland at that time, which meant that there were plenty of jobs for people in these factories, which meant that they could purchase X, Y, and Z, whereas poor farmers who were kicked off their land, not being able to pay the rent, and ended up in these famine houses, which were run by the nuns, which were run by priests at the time. So there were two very contrasting times for both Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland, which subtly had a knock-on effect when you're looking at Ireland in the early 1900s, especially around the time of the Civil War, when Ireland was looking for independence from the UK. So 1921, the Anglo-Irish Agreement, which was signed by Michael Collins. Part of that was that the Northern Ireland would stay within Britain because it was still doing quite well in terms of its industries. That Ireland would keep 26 states or 26 counties. And that caused a civil war because one half of the country wanted all 32 counties. The other half said, let's take what we can for now, and we'll get the other 6 counties at a later time. And that led then into unionism versus nationalism, Protestants versus Catholics, because the vast majority of those who owned the wealth and owned the factories and so on in Northern Ireland were Protestants who favoured giving jobs to Protestants, and then there was the rivalry then that stems from that. So, and then subsequently that transferred then into more of a religious kind of battle in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s in Ireland as well. So that's I suppose it's a kind of a long-winded answer, but that's the reason why the famine didn't really affect Northern Ireland as much as Southern Ireland. So maybe you're right, Sam. Maybe I just know everything. Maybe
you know a lot. You were very good in history class. Did you fancy your history teacher or something?
No, I think she fancied me. No, just, and that's just from retention, just from.
But there's a great series actually at the moment, Jeremy. You might want to look up. It's called The Rebellion, and it's actually on RTE at the moment, which is our national station. So the RTE player, you should be able to watch that, shouldn't you, Patrick? The Rebellion.
If you just type in rteplayer.ie, you should be able to watch a TV show here at the moment, which is based around.
Do you want me to put it in there for you, Patrick, or for Jeremy, just in case? Hang on, I'll find it. Because you should be able to watch that. And that's all about the 1960, because it's the anniversary this year. So this year would be a good year to come to Ireland because they're celebrating. I'm not into politics or anything, but it's a good year as regards what's things going on, for you to come.
So the TV show Rebellion is about it's based on 1916 Rising, which was a failed rebellion, but it just struck a nerve, which led to the origins of the Sinn Féin, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, which all were set up in 1918 and 1921 respectively. So the foundations of the parties who are still in power today all happened at that time. So it's a good show. It's not entirely accurate in terms of historically speaking, but it'll give you a good gist of of what things were like at the time. But then there are movies that you can watch, like The Wind That Shakes the Barley, which would be a good example of how Ireland was at that time of British rule. There are actually some documentaries about Famine itself, but just very little. The reality is, if you really wanted to do something serious about the famine, just come to Ireland, and we have a proper Irish dude here in the corner.
Proper Irish dude here in the corner. Hi, James.
I'm drinking I'm drinking Lambrini in the Guinness glass. I feel ashamed of myself, but it's cheap and it tastes good.
Now, are you Northern Ireland, James? So you might be able to help Jeremy about what your accent. Where are you from?
I'm from Newcastle in County Down.
There you go, Jeremy. So that would be close to where your wife's ancestors.
I've been there. I've been to Newcastle County Down. It's a good old spot.
Oh,
there was a Scouts Jamboree there in 1994, and I was there. It's good times.
So Jeremy, I live like just over an hour away from Belfast, so it's like really it's a coastal town. It's like really beautiful. Got the Mourne Mountains and stuff, and I live close to Tullymore Forest. We're a part of I think the first couple of seasons of Game of Thrones, like sort of like forest scenes were like sort of filmed. So like obviously we get like a load of tourists to come. Yeah, but actually, it might confuse a lot of people. I'm from Northern Ireland, but like I consider myself Irish, and then I get into like a whole debate. It's like you're from Northern Ireland and you have the tricolour, and then I don't mind having a talk about it, but like I have an Irish passport. I consider I don't acknowledge. I don't want to I don't want to call myself British. I'm really into politics, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's the same, Jeremy, for like one of the world's best golfers is Rory McIlroy, who again is technically from Northern Ireland, which is technically part of the British Empire, but he definitely considers himself Irish, 100% Irish, and that goes back to that in 1921, 1922, when the country went into civil war. Half the country wanted a full 32 county Ireland, but some, mostly Protestants or Unionists, wanted to remain part of the UK. So if you go into the north, certain parts and certain pockets will be very Republican, very Irish, and some will be very Unionists and very very British. And those parts, particularly in Belfast, the Ardoyne Road and places like that. You see murals on Shankill, You will see murals of either British propaganda or Irish propaganda, depending on what you want. But
you wouldn't really go into those areas, Jeremy. Like I was in Belfast there, and I didn't see any of that, And then I was in Oma. I go to Oma a lot in Fermanagh, and I don't see any of that, So it just depends on if you want to find it or not, I suppose. Would that be right, James?
But it's quite peaceful there now in terms of,
it looks like it, which is surprising because, 10, 20 years ago, it was a much different story. And you guys remember, you couldn't pick up the paper every day without reading about something happening in Belfast or somewhere in Northern Ireland. But
I'm really glad I didn't grow up during the Troubles. Like, I'm only 20, so I obviously, the ceasefire happened in the Good Friday Agreement was in 97, I think. So like late 90s and stuff. But yeah, I consider myself like a Republican, so I have these really like staunch like political views and like things, but I'm not a bigot. I'm friends with like loyalists and all sorts. And Belfast over the years I've seen, even though I'm quite young, has sort of like changed. So it depends what like you want to get out of your journey when you come here. Like people do come here to go on the mural tours, like just to like learn about the past. And then some people just go about like in the city centre where it's all nice and nice restaurants and stuff. So it's all good. Like it's cheaper up here, so come to Northern Ireland.
It's cheaper. That's true.
It is true. You can't argue with that. Fucking Dublin is just, I love Dublin. I've been many times, obviously, but like it's bloody expensive. Jesus.
Yeah.
Not to put anyone off. It's like still go there. I'm just saying.
But Jeremy, let us know when you come over, won't you? Jeremy, please do let us know, because we grab a coffee or whatever, pint, I suppose. See, I don't drink anymore, so Patrick, you can drink for me.
All right.
I'll drink for Sam.
But I'm going to head now. Okay, guys, I have to go and give my children some attention. It's bedtime here. It's 20:08. So,
okay. Thanks.
Great topic. Do it again, Jeremy.
Okay.
And I might see you again.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. Hey, I'm trying to I'm trying to figure out where to go with this, and I'm trying to figure out if I've covered everything that I meant to cover today. Let's see. Well, there are a couple other resources here that I could cite, but I don't want to get into just dropping links. I think it's more interesting to, have you guys here from Ireland to give us, kind of your own firsthand perspective. So I don't know. Do either of you does the topic come up in discussion? The potato famine, immigration, things like that. Or is it kind of just kind of there in the background? What do you think?
Again, it depends on where you live. So I live in the southeast, so I live in Wexford. So even any of the troubles that you'd be aware of in terms of the IRA and bombings and the British forces in the north, we were kind of sheltered from that because it wasn't on our doorstep. So it wasn't really as significant a part of our daily lives. Whereas the likes of James, I've been to Newcastle, County Down when I was 10 years of age, and I remember staying in a hall thinking, oh God, there's an IRA guy in the roof going to kill us, which is all silly at the time. But it depends on what part of the country you're in. Certainly in north of Ireland, it would probably come up much more. Animosity would probably be higher up there than other parts of the country.
Sure.
Certainly in the west of Ireland, it's more kind of the industries in there are all about tourism and welcoming people and so on and so forth. But the famine itself, for me, and certainly in the south, it's not something that comes up a whole lot. But we've got tourism down here, so we have Americans and so on, on tour buses who ask questions about it and so on, and want to go see, historical, landmarks and so on that represent the famine. But it's not a daily occurrence.
Okay.
But it's definitely something that's still taught very much in schools.
Sure.
From 4 to 12, that kind of age group. And it's certainly something that we're not going to forget anytime soon. But I'm sure James is a different scenario with some of his more unionist friends in the north of Ireland who probably see, the thing is British people, when they write their history books, leave things out like the famine. So it's not something
that is true. Yeah, and that's partly why I wanted to make sure we did this, because it's one of those things where, it happened so long ago, it doesn't matter now. And well, actually it does. I mean, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for this. I would be somewhere else. I might be in Ireland with you guys right now. I don't know.
Yeah, and when I speak to my English friends and I speak about the famine, I speak about, some of the, right up until the 20s, they have no idea what I'm talking about because it's never been written. History kind of writes about its victories rather than its embarrassments. So certainly when you're talking, and James probably gets it a lot more up in the north, because Northern Ireland right now is kind of like its own separate entity. It gets funding from Ireland, but it gets funding from the UK as well. It's got its own parliament and so on as well, but it's still very much divided into unionists versus Republicans. So he would have a lot more. But
he's okay. It's all right.
But the English people just don't know anything about it. We had a rugby game in Croke Park, which is our national stadium for our national game, and the English people were playing there, and it was in 2007. And the Irish people got very passionate about it and were crying during the national anthems and so on and so forth, because in the British soldiers opened fire on the crowd in Croke Park back in the early 1900s, and it was called Bloody Sunday as well, just a different type of Bloody Sunday. And the English media and so on just had no idea why we were getting so upset about, you know, the fact that we were allowing the British national anthem to be played in our national stadium and so on. So, but then James would know a lot more about that. He lives in Northern Ireland. James, you want to come in on that?
Sorry, I missed the last bit. I was away there saying, what were we talking about?
I'm just saying
bloody.
It's very different, you know, in terms of the famine and the crimes of the British government against the Irish. One, it's different for you there because it's much more kind of relevant.
Yeah, it's mainly, whenever it's brought up, it's mainly talked about as like as an insult. You like from loyalists, they're basically saying like the famine's over, go home, like sort of like pathetic nonsense like that. The people who don't know their history. I'm not saying I know everything, but it's like you can't really, if you're born in this like the North or whatever, no matter what your views are, like you're telling somebody to go home. Like, what? I was born here. Do you want me to? Where am I supposed to go? I was born here. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the famine, probably not so much. It's mainly whenever I hear like famine, it's, yeah, like I said, it's from loyalists. And in Northern Ireland, like in Newcastle now is pretty neutral, so it's like sort of, it's mainly Catholic, but sort of like no one really like cares. Sort of like everyone has different views, everyone gets on. But if you go to like the like neighbouring towns that could be staunch unionist areas, like Clough is like 2 minutes away. That's a staunch unionist area. And then you go the town further from that, Downpatrick, that would be considered sort of Republican area. Like some of the hunger strikers came from there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go further than that. There's, you know, so it's like different towns that are really close together. Like, so it can be really volatile. So sometimes, I mean, I nearly got, I don't want to get too dark, but I nearly got stabbed one time. I'm laughing about it now because I can. I nearly got stabbed one time because I was a Catholic. And I'm not a practicing Catholic, I don't really care, but as soon as like someone knows that you're a Catholic, like they'll just start stupid nonsense like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's mainly just like whenever the famine comes up, it's just horrible nonsense from loyalists. That's my point.
But again, Jeremy, just to put it that again, you know, that type of violence, it's just carried out by people who actually generally don't understand the history of the last 150, 200 years of the Irish state, mm-hmm. and are just doing it because they're trying to find something to believe in and don't actually understand what they're doing. And because they're Protestant or because they're Unionist, the culture that they grew up in says that they should be behaving in a particular way against, you know, Catholics and so on. So, right. But again, happy to report it's nowhere near as bad as what it was back in the 90s and the 80s and the 70s. But again, the famine, like I said earlier, it's not something that really affected Northern Ireland in the same way as it affected Cork, Kerry, Clare, Waterford, Wexford, and parts of Donegal and so on.
Right. Yep. Well, guys, I want to thank both of you for helping us out with your perspectives and all that. I think it's been a very valuable discussion. I do hope to revisit this topic and some of the, you know, kind of looking at the aftermath of the potato famine and maybe more recent history with, you know, the immigration issue. We didn't get to talk about much, but a lot of Irish immigrants, we ended up in the United States and, you know, benefited from the Homestead Act here. And that's what my grandpa homesteaded in Nebraska. And, you know, that family farm has been in our family for more than 100 years now. And I mean, that wouldn't have been possible if his grandfather hadn't immigrated from Ireland because of the potato famine. I mean, there just was no, for our family as poor Southern Irish potato farmers, there really weren't other options unless we could learn to fish or do something like that. And the fishing, you know, the weather fluctuates so much, at least in that time period, that fishing wasn't a realistic option for a lot of people. So it kind of depends what area you are. But some of the winters were too harsh to really allow fishing to be that profitable as another option. So,
absolutely agree. I think I remember what you're talking about. The you're in Nebraska, which is Nebraska, is that right?
Yes.
So I remember a movie, Far and Away, with Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman. Awful movie. Just the worst Irish accents ever, I think. But
no.
I think there was part of that whereby land grabbing and so on in kind of the more central states was part of that movie, I think. So it was around that time anyway. So, but you're absolutely right in terms of the Irish built, the big cities of the US, Chicago, Boston, New York, and undoubtedly within certain parts. And I spend a lot of time in Boston, and everybody I speak to there reckons they're Irish more than they're anything else. So, because the impact of the Irish that the Irish had. I mean, 1.2 million people over a period of 25 years landed on the shores of the United States. That's a lot of people. And thank God we were kind of welcomed to a certain extent. But then again, it was we were treated. My Irish ancestors would have been treated worse than dogs at some point then as well, because there was so many of us arriving at that particular time. But again, when you either stay in Ireland or die, or take your chances and go across the ocean and see the new world, as it were. So,
yep.
But I gotta go, Jeremy. I followed you on Twitter there, so you can follow me back. And if you ever want to have another chat, just let me know. And I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Okay, thanks, Patrick. Thanks, James.
See ya.
Gonna wrap this up, guys. So take care. See you later.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. This is Jeremy Murphy. I want to thank you for joining us to discuss the Irish potato famine. And we will have further discussions on this issue and Irish history and the immigration effects. And we'll hopefully have some Irish participation on that. And I'll try to coordinate that with some people that we've met and maybe some more that may be interested. I have some Irish friends over there that might be able to coordinate some of this with. So anyway, have a great day. And this has been Jeremy Murphy in Lincoln, Nebraska, discussing the Irish potato famine. Have a great day. Bye.